Let me start by giving you a bit of background about my situation. I'm currently finishing up my last year of undergrad, studying to become a teacher. Right now, I'm doing my student teaching at a high school. In addition to that, I have a job at the university's game room. Oh, and another important detail, I'm engaged, so you might hear me mention my fiancé here and there. I'm actually at work as I write this, so bear with me if this seems a bit rushed. I don't have much time. Earlier this afternoon, not long after school ended for the weekend, I got a text from an unknown number. The area code matched my region, but I didn't have the number saved in my contacts. I assumed one of my students had somehow found my number through Facebook or some other means and was just trying to pull a prank. Still, the message felt unsettling. It read, "Don't go to work tonight." My first instinct was to reply and ask who I was talking to, but my message wouldn't send. I tried again a few more times and even sent a message to a friend to confirm my phone was working, which it was. No issues on my end. I had mentioned to some of my students earlier how much I hated working late shifts, so I figured one of them was just messing with me. I briefly considered the possible reasons for not going to work, but none seemed all that serious. Sure, working late isn't ideal, especially when you wake up at 5:30 every morning. Still, I chose to disregard the text. Around 8:30 p.m., I started getting ready for my shift. I changed out of my comfy clothes and into my work uniform. As I took off my sky blue, rather obnoxious polo shirt, my phone buzzed again. I froze, staring at the screen. This time the message read, "I see you aren't listening. You need to stay home. Please." I glanced at my fiancée, wondering if she was behind this as some sort of elaborate prank. But she hadn't lifted her head from her organic chemistry book. I felt myself getting warm with frustration, irritated at being caught up in what I assumed was a joke. I thought about telling her about the messages, but I knew she was swamped with her final exams coming up. Plus, she didn't appreciate interruptions when she was studying. So I grabbed my bag, gave her a quick kiss goodbye, and left the house. As I opened the front door, I cautiously scanned the street, half expecting to see someone parked nearby, watching me. But there were no cars in sight, and no sign of anyone. Still feeling uneasy, I hurried to my car. Before getting in, I checked the back seat, something I wouldn't normally do, but those messages had me on edge. I hopped into the driver's seat, tossed my bag onto the passenger side, and locked the doors. Just then, my phone buzzed again. I prayed it was my fiancé telling me I'd forgotten something inside, but of course it wasn't. The message read, "Don't go, James. They will be out tonight." I hesitantly started the car and began my short drive to work, my mind racing. I was so preoccupied that I barely remembered clocking in. The building manager noticed something was off and asked if I was okay. I just nodded and kept walking. What was I supposed to say? "Yeah, everything's great. Just ignoring some weird texts telling me to stay home." Number I decided to keep it to myself. The game room was packed with people playing ping pong, pool, and the attached cafe was bustling with students grabbing snacks before heading to their parties. This was the usual scene, students buying mixers for frat parties, loading up on greasy burgers and pizza. Normally, a few people would stick around until close to play, but tonight was different. By 10 p.m., aside from the cafe workers and the building manager, Mia, the place was completely empty. Mia came by and made a sarcastic remark about how lively the game room was. She was about to walk away when I called out, "Taylor, wait a minute. Can I ask you something?" She turned around, slightly confused, and said, "Sure, what's up?" I hesitated but decided to tell her, "I've been getting these weird text messages tonight. I don't know who they're from, but they've been telling me not to come to work. It's stressing me out. I'm probably just being silly, right?" Taylor furrowed her brow, nodding slowly. She likely thought I was overreacting. I continued, "Is there something going on tonight? One of the messages said something about them being out tonight." She gave a small shrug and said, "James, I think someone's just messing with you. Don't worry about it. We only have a few hours left, and then we can go home and sleep." I would have felt more reassured if my phone hadn't buzzed right then. This time, I refused to look at the message. I tried to focus on something else. mindlessly scrolling through my Facebook feed. But my thoughts kept circling back to those texts. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced at the new message. It read, "You shouldn't have told her. They'll be coming for her now. You need to make sure you leave work before 1 a.m. I figured I'd try messaging back again, desperate for answers. My hands shook a little as I typed, "Why? Why do I need to leave before 1 a.m.? After what felt like forever, I got a reply. "They are coming. If you make it, meet me tomorrow outside the game room. Make sure you get there before it opens." If I make it? What the hell was that supposed to mean? I furiously tapped out another message, demanding more information, but my messages wouldn't go through. I felt a wave of isolation wash over me. I realized I hadn't seen Taylor in a while, so I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. The cafe staff had already gone home, as there were no students around by that point. I thought about trying to call Taylor again, assuming she might have gone to the bathroom or something. It's now around 12:45 a.m., and I still haven't seen Taylor since our conversation earlier. I've called both her cell and the building manager's phone multiple times, but no luck. I've already closed up the game room, and I'm just waiting for someone to come lock the doors behind me. I can't shake the feeling that I need to leave now, before 1 a.m. rolls around. But with just minutes to spare, I'm running out of time. If Taylor doesn't show up soon, I'll have to leave without her. I'll update again when I make it out of here. I regret ever responding to those messages in the first place. The day has been a mess, and I've been held up all day, but I'll get to that in a minute. First off, yes, I'm okay. I didn't run into them last night, but I never did find Taylor before I left work, and part of me wishes I'd never told her anything. Let me tell you what happened today. You're probably going to hate me. For starters, I barely slept last night. I rushed home, slammed the door behind me, and locked it as quickly as I could. I didn't wake my fiancée. I wasn't about to tell her what was going on. What if they came for her too, if I did? All I could do was wait. It's not exactly easy to sleep after something like that happens. I kept waiting for another message from my mysterious friend. Though at this point, I wasn't sure if calling them a friend was right. I started referring to them as Pariah, a name I got from a comic book. In the story, Pariah tried to warn all the superheroes of some catastrophic event, and that seemed to fit the situation I was in. Eventually, I took some sleeping pills, but the wait for them to kick in was agonizing. My mind kept wandering back to Taylor. I barely knew her. The game room was pretty isolated from where the rest of the staff worked, so I didn't have much interaction with my coworkers. Somewhere between worrying that Taylor had been kidnapped or worse, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up this morning, I didn't even need to question whether last night had been a dream. I knew it had been real. My fiancée woke up around the same time, rubbing her eyes and saying, "Morning, babe. How was work? Quiet night?" "Yeah, it was quiet. It cleared out pretty early," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Oh, that's good. Those are the nights you like, right? You get to play some RuneScape?" she asked as she stretched and got out of bed. I didn't move for a while, still processing everything. Yeah. I played a little," I lied. "A little? What did you do for the rest of your shift? Did you get any of those essays graded?" By then, I was finally getting out of bed and dressing. "No, I didn't grade anything, I just waited." "Waited?" She raised an eyebrow. "You feeling okay? You seem a little out of it." Yeah, I'm good. Just tired," I muttered. But my thoughts were elsewhere. I remembered Pariah's message about meeting at the game room. What if I actually went? "I've got to get back to the game room," I said, pulling my shirt over my head, still debating whether I had time for a shower. I didn't. I might run some errands after that too. "Well, don't be gone too long," my fiancée warned, making air quotes with her fingers. "You're never going to get those essays graded if you keep running errands. And don't forget, you've got work tonight." I paused for a second. "Yeah, working the 6 to 9 shift, right?" "Yep, but you could switch with the closer and make some extra money," she suggested, eyeing me. "I don't know if that's such a good idea. I'm pretty tired, and it's only 7:25 in the morning," I said, feeling the weight of exhaustion creeping in. She narrowed her eyes, and I knew a lecture about the wedding and how we needed to save more money was on the tip of her tongue. But instead, she just smiled and said, "Money's money, baby. Do what you want, though." "I'll think about it," I muttered, grabbing my things. "I really need to get going, love you." I was already out the door before she had a chance to say it back. The game room opens at noon on weekends, and it was 11:40 a.m. when I stepped outside. I needed to hurry if I was going to meet up with Pariah. When I arrived at the game room, a chill ran through me. My heart dropped when I saw who was there. 2 police officers were speaking to one of the non-student managers, Bo and Sarah, our boss. Sarah never works on Saturdays, so seeing her there was unsettling. One of the officers was jotting something down in a small notebook, while the other was asking questions. Sarah's eyes were red and swollen from crying. I silently prayed that this wasn't about Taylor. When Sarah spotted me, she called out, "James!" "Officers, this is James. He was working last night with Taylor." I slowly approached, feeling a heavy weight settle in my stomach. My mind raced, and my legs felt weak as I made my way toward them. I asked, "What's going on?" The officer who had been asking questions turned to me and said, "Good morning, son. Do you mind if we ask you a couple of questions?" I must have looked like I was about to pass out. Somehow, I found my voice and stammered, "No, not at all. Is everything okay?" The officer who had been writing in the notebook finally looked up and spoke for the first time. "James, can you tell us about last night? How did things go?" I explained everything, how the game room cleared out around 10 p.m., how the cafe staff left early since there weren't many people around. None of it seemed to grab their attention. My anxiety was building, so I finally asked, "Is this about Taylor?" The officer stopped writing and raised his eyes to meet mine. The other officer turned toward me, and at that moment, Sarah broke down into tears. The officer who was now facing me was tall and imposing. He laid a hand on my shoulder, trying to calm me down. He must have seen how shaken I was because his tone softened as he asked, "When was the last time you saw her?" I tried my best to explain how Taylor had come by the game room to check up on me, but my voice was trembling so badly I could barely string a sentence together. I couldn't help it. Fear was gripping me. Eventually, the officer stopped me and said, "Why don't we go sit down? We can get you a cup of water, and you can take a minute to collect your thoughts." His voice had a genuine warmth, and for a moment, I felt a sense of safety. We moved into the cafe and sat down in one of the booths. Finally, I managed to tell the officers and Sarah about the night before, how I hadn't seen Taylor after she came to check on me. But I left out one crucial detail. I didn't mention Pariah or the cryptic text messages. I know it sounds irresponsible, but pride told me they were going after Taylor after I had already warned her, and I can't risk anyone else's safety. The officers informed me that they needed to take me to the station for a while so they could review last night's surveillance footage from the building. Eventually, I got in the car. "Can you just tell me what's happening, Sarah?" I asked, feeling the weight of the situation. Sarah let out a cry and buried her face in her hands, and one of the officers who wasn't busy writing moved over to comfort her. "I should have realized," I muttered. "In some way, I think I did know, but I needed someone to confirm it." The other officer stopped writing for a moment, took a deep breath, and said, "We believe Taylor's remains were found this morning. The building manager reported that the doors were never locked last night. In fact, the lights were all left on. During his rounds, he found something. He discovered the building manager's uniform and some bones in the basement, all soaked in blood. We're still waiting for official confirmation, but we're fairly confident it's Taylor. Her boyfriend also said she never came home last night." I was in shock. After a pause, I finally spoke. "It's Taylor, isn't it?" They all watched me, waiting for more, but I hadn't seen her for most of the night. I waited for a while before leaving, thinking she'd notice I was gone and lock the door behind me. There wasn't anyone else here except us. They exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. I continued, "Do you think I had something to do with this?" "I don't, Joe," I replied, as the officer who had been comforting Sarah stood up. "No one's accusing you of anything," he said. "We just need your cooperation. We'll take you to the station and we can sort everything out from there. We're going to review the security footage and see if we can find anything. Sound good?" I nodded. "Yeah, sounds good." I knew that once they checked the footage, they'd see me sitting at the games room desk all night. There's a camera aimed directly at the desk, though I was pretty sure there weren't any cameras in the basement. The basement's unfinished, and not many people go down there. I knew the ballroom team practiced there sometimes, but that's only because it's a big open space. The footage would show them entering or leaving from one of the main entrances, all of which have cameras. Once they spotted them, this would all be over, I thought. At the station, the officers treated me kindly. They didn't put me in an interrogation room, and they were considerate, asking if I was hungry or if I wanted coffee. I answered politely, but kept thinking about when I'd be able to leave. In the end, they released me. They had watched all 4 hours of footage of me sitting at the desk and replayed the moments where I talked to Taylor at least 4 or 5 times. They even asked me to narrate what we discussed during those interactions. Oddly, every camera in the building, except the one in the games room, cut out shortly after Taylor left. No footage of the entrances, nothing from anywhere else. Just the games room camera remaining functional after she walked out. I still don't know why they let me go, but they did. I gave them my phone number, and they told me to stay in town, which I had no issue with. That's when things started to feel even more reckless. I sat in the parking lot of the police station, feeling restless. I called the games room attendant who was closer to Dieter and practically begged them to switch shifts with me. She happily gave up her shift, which was a relief. I needed the pariah to contact me. I needed answers. Sure enough, I soon received a message from Pariah. The message read, "You irresponsible fool. What are you doing? Are you trying to get yourself killed?" I paused, thinking carefully before responding. Eventually, I replied, "I need to know about them. The people you say are coming. Who are they? And what do they want?" I didn't expect such a quick response, but it came almost immediately. "There's nothing more to say. They're just like you, Amia. They're hungry, and they're furious that you escaped. They're coming. You can't trust anyone but me, not even your fiancé." I sent a few more messages back, insisting that my fiancé would never betray me. But though the messages went through, I never got a response. Frustrated, I gave up trying to reach Pariah and headed home to wait for my shift. When I got to work, I greeted my fiancé. He was pleased to hear that I'd be earning an extra $7.25, completely unaware of everything else that was going on. It's now 12:55 a.m., and I'm here at work, waiting. I know it might sound ridiculous, but I brought a knife with me, just in case. I'm ready. I told the building manager to head home early, promising I'd lock up behind him. He gladly handed me his keys and left without any hesitation. After closing up the games room, I locked myself in the back office. The knife is still with me, and I'm sitting against the door, trying to keep calm. The waiting is unbearable. I've got the camera feed pulled up on the desktop in the office, and from where I'm sitting I can see it clearly. 2 minutes go by, and the silence is driving me crazy. Suddenly the feed blinks for a second but doesn't cut out. Maybe it's just a coincidence, I tell myself, but I'm not sure. Don't be stupid, I think, though the tension won't leave me. I've moved away from the door, listening, waiting. And then, I hear someone on the other side of the door. A knock follows, and then a familiar voice calls out, "James, James, it's me. Open up." That voice, I know it. It's her. "It's going to be okay," I whisper to myself. She would never betray me.